You're listening to The Coaching Divas, a podcast for everyone navigating the twists and turns of corporate life.
Follow along as we chat through common workplace situations and extend the coach approach to help you handle them with ease.
We offer a cross-sectional view that spans generations, positions, workplaces, and lifestyles.
We're your hosts,
Claudia Jones,
Daniela Velkovic,
and Misha Jethba, and we are
The Coaching Divas.
Welcome back to The Coaching Divas, where we help you navigate the workplace with a dash of wit, a dose of strategy, and just enough caffeine to keep things moving. It's a new year, and you know what that means. Fresh goals, fresh start, and probably a fresh stack of emails waiting for you in your inbox. But we're not going to touch that. But hey, this isn't about setting resolutions you'll forget by February. Nope. We're here to help you kick off 2025 with a mindset that's not just positive, but productive. Whether it's tackling that ambitious project, setting boundaries that stick, or making the most of your work-life balance, we've got you covered. So if you're ready to stop just surviving the workplace and start thriving, stick around because we're going to make that happen.
Welcome back. It's January 2nd. What are we doing?
We're surviving.
Well, there's the high off of the vacation, assuming that
Or a
you
break,
survived
yeah.
the family, the trauma of meeting new people or meeting with old people you didn't want to chat with over the course of the year, or you've just come back from a really awesome vacation. You're like, oh, I'm either refreshed
When's
or
my
I'm...
next one?
When's the next one? Yeah, that's where my brain went.
Yeah, I think it's so easy when you're in the work context of if you get a break during the holidays. It never really feels truly like a break because sure, it's a break for your brain from work, but then that same energy is being focused towards holiday gatherings, family gatherings, planning. You know, if you celebrate Christmas, what does that entail? And you kind of just get thrown right back into work. And so sometimes there really isn't a true break necessarily. And so, you know, when we're talking about starting a fresh year, how do you get back into the office and not just feel like you're dragging your feet the same way you were right before you left?
That's a great comment, Misha. How do you feel about the saying, a change is as good as a rest? So you've been away for a week, 2 weeks. Hopefully you had a chance to take a break from the office life. But now you have family things or holiday things or vacation things going on. And even though you didn't physically perhaps get a chance to really rest or rest your mind, it was a change of scenery, change of environment, change of people. And yeah, are you coming back to work refreshed or are you coming back to work even more tired than when you left?
That's a good point. Well, here's the thing. My coping mechanism has always been segregate life from work. So come in, all right, let's start it off. And I mean, there are some groups, like if you're Eastern European, you may be celebrating Christmas on Jan 7th. So you're kind of stuck in some a bit of a vortex still, depending on where you are. But that all said, I think for me, January has always been a moment to, you know what, jump in to the new year. A lot of companies, at least the companies I've been in, focus on what's important for the next fiscal year. So I'm thinking about my performance. Hopefully I've received my bonus or I'm getting my bonus in that month, which is always exciting. Planning a winter vacation. Hopefully. Those are the first things I'd be thinking about. But really from a work perspective, I guess what I would suggest is, you know, start thinking about what do you want. You've done all these great reflections in the previous year. Now let's put them into action, if there is an action. I think for me personally right now, I've been looking at it to say, well, when I'm here in January, what are the next 4 quarters going to look like for me? And really just plot out a vision. That's what I think would be a great start.
Yeah, I think for me, when it comes to work, I know this sounds a little cliche, but I do sometimes think it's a new year. Let me wipe the slate clean, fresh start. It's not really a fresh start from the sense of like you're starting from zero, but it's a fresh start from a mindset perspective for me to be hyper aware and intentional about, okay, what do I really truly want to be doing differently this year? What do I want to be focused on? And committing to all those reflections that I made the year before, probably the night before, on the 31st. But it's just for myself, making the commitment and, slightly changing your routine or things like that so that it is showing up. I am showing up differently or elevated or things like that.
I got a kick of your comment about, I probably just made these decisions the night before. And it's true. But in honesty, I bet a lot of these revelations have been stewing with you for quite a while. And it's probably just a chance to kind of either put pen to paper or to, what I always say too, is say it out loud, right? Once you say something out loud, it's out there in the universe and it feels a bit more solid, a bit more achievable, and it's a bit more real. So now, even though you may have made this resolution or these revelations the night before, these are things that have been with you for quite some time. And so nothing brand new is going to pop out at this point. These are things you've been thinking about for some time. So the chances of you being successful with them is probably much higher than saying, I'm going to learn to fly a plane this year. Where did the heck did that come from? Right? That's something that just probably popped in the moment, which you're not going to do because it hasn't been sitting with you for a while. And it's not something I assume you truly don't believe in. But it's all these ruminating kind of things that are going to happen. So I can see that happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say too is that be realistic with yourself. If you keep having the same resolutions every year and you don't follow through on them, maybe it's time to kind of really take a look and reflect on these resolutions and say, why haven't I been successful at them? And what can I really commit myself to doing for the year going forward?
Yeah. What sparked for me as you guys were both sharing your perspectives is the idea that I can actually start taking tangible activities in the workplace. So maybe the first thing I can do, because part of it will be for me to actually put together my performance plan. What courses do I want to take? Let me spend an afternoon. Let me actually book in my calendar time that I'm going to do for training. The other thing that's perked up for me was, hey, if there's people that I haven't reached out to that I should get to know better, let me reach out to them and see if they want to go for a cup of coffee. Start booking some of those intentional, actual opportunities to meet with people. The other thing I would consider is if you're a person that doesn't have a lot of courage or you haven't been particularly happy in the previous year, well, what does courage look like for you in the workplace? And how can you bring that forward? Maybe it's actually meeting someone new and grabbing a cup of coffee with them. And intentionally saying, I'm going to start doing that. If you're not great at publicly speaking, well, take a look. Are there, things like Toastmasters and opportunities to actually practice those skills? So here's a chance to start exploring all of those areas that maybe you were really uncomfortable with in the previous years and start finding opportunities is the first thing I would say. Like intentionally saying what's out there in the workplace for me to harness. And if you're in a small company, maybe just telling someone that this is what you want to start doing differently and being more authentic and vulnerable to sharing some of these intentions would be helpful too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's calling out for me listening to both of you is it's not really about like boiling the ocean on January 1st. And so the cliche, let's make New Year's resolutions, don't make them these grandiose things if that doesn't work for you. Start small. Think of it as a journey and the baby steps and, how you're going to get somewhere. Sure, you can cast the rod far and say, by the end of the year, I want to be promoted into XYZ role. But that can't actually be what you're solely focused on. You got to be focusing on the steps that get you there. The promotion is the vision. That's not what you're doing every single day, though. And so it's being able to break it down for yourself to say, like, if that's really what I want this, like, my year to be defined by, right? So the same questions we were asking ourselves at the end of the previous year, think about foreshadow to say, okay, what do I want to be or this year to be defined by? What do I want to have achieved by the end of the year? So you almost start with the reverse reflection that you're going to do at the end of the year, but you do it at the start. And that just sets it casts the vision. It doesn't necessarily mean that's it and your work is done. The work really, when I'm thinking about starting a year fresh, is, okay, cool. I've set that vision, but how am I going to make that happen? What do I need to change in myself in order to, or in my environment, in order to get to that? How do I want to get to that? Do I want to burn the candle at both ends to get there? Or do I want to respect my boundaries, my space, my balance, all of that along the way? And so really, I think it's about starting small. And it's like, okay, this month, here's what I'm going to be focused on. And then you get to February and it's like, okay, quick check-in. How do I need to shift? How can I elevate what I'm focused on? So keep doing the habit I've created from January and add to it. And then you'd be surprised that, you get to the end of the year and you are where you are.
So in that scenario, Misha, are you plotting ahead of time what you're going to accomplish every month? Or are you just building on the month before to see where you're going and making sure you're on the right path?
I want to be cautious here because some people do better planning it all out for the whole entire year. For some, that might be extremely overwhelming. Yeah. Or it's almost like analysis paralysis, but it's like paralysis in planning, right? Okay. Like that could happen for some folks. Yeah. And so personally for me, what I would say is I would set the whole year vision of like, okay, what are the key things I really want to feel like I've accomplished or mastered this year? And it's a list that'll just, sit in a drawer or on the wall, wherever I'm going to put it. And I'll start simply by thinking about January.
Okay.
In my immediate horizon, what's one thing I can do to achieve or make progress towards that vision? Then I'll check in with myself at the end of January and say, okay, How did I do? Where do I need to adjust? And that where do I need to adjust dictates February.
I think that's brilliant. And I think that's what we really need to do is not just blindly follow the plan, but adjust every month on a regular basis as to how that plan is falling off for you. And if you have to change it, you have to change it, right? Because your environment changes, circumstances change. Just listening to your earlier comment, Misha, about I'm really hoping to get promoted later this year. That involves other people. It's not just yourself, right? So you have to understand, how do I make myself known to my senior leadership? How do I demonstrate the skills that I have? Because these are influences out there that you really don't have any control over. And so you have to understand who's part of my plan and understanding how do I engage them and help them understand this is what I want to do this year. And then work together and that plan will get adjusted accordingly.
Yeah. But what you really highlighted there, Claudia, as well, is the idea that if you have these aspirations, who's in your camp that's going to support your aspirations too? Who is going to be your advocate, your ally? Also be realistic. If you haven't built those relationships before in a way that's intentional, take the time. Start of the first fiscal year, take the time to connect and, hey, how's your holiday? How's your vacation? Lean into the small chit-chat if you're uncomfortable with that kind of principle and those ideas, but showing up will help you. The other piece that I think what is really coming up for me, and I know that this is always a bit of a hot topic, how much do I have to have presence in the office, right? We're way past COVID. A lot of companies are continuing to do in-office beyond whatever was expected before. Well, when you're there, how are you going to be different than the previous year so that people know that you're there? What I would encourage us to be thinking about, besides the incremental shifts, is depending on what your goal is in terms of visibility for yourself and being your advocate, where can you tap into within the organization to actually volunteer your time? When's a charity window coming up?
Or volunteer period.
What's the volunteer period? What are the windows where maybe there's a fund committee? Maybe there's different showcases that are coming up.
Or like ERGs, right? Employee resource groups. Which ones can you get involved with?
If your company has different types of, within your industry, let's say you have like a baseball team or a dragon boat rowing team, is there opportunities where you can start building out those connections as well? Because let's be honest, the vision may be to get promoted, or the vision may be to be put on that awesome project, or the vision may be to be viewed as a future leader. But to get to that vision, there's also investment that you need to start doing. Maybe January is a great opportunity to start looking at all of those different things that have been out there that you haven't been in tune to before.
I want to take us back to the first point you made, which is around knowing your people. And specifically, I think all three of us might remember this, but when we went through our coaching certification, do you remember the exercise of defining your A people, your B people, your C people?
I do.
Yeah.
It's a bit of that, and it's really about, when you think of your A people, who are the people to the core that are either going to support you, or if I flip it to the context of work, it's not just support, but who are the people who are going to advocate for you, who are going to be in your corner to give you that critical feedback versus just keep telling you like, yeah, you're great.
Yeah,
Like, I don't want confrontation. I'm not going to tell you what you need to improve. They don't see you as competition. They want to uplift you, even if you're peers. So it's really about defining that your A people at work, who's going to be in your corner. And then I would go as far as to say, define the B and the C. The C people are like, who do you just need to be acquaintances with? Doesn't really impact you, but it doesn't hurt you either. And that B group is, I often find at work, the B group is the people you work with the most, but they don't really directly impact, let's say, if you have a promotion goal on your plate, or they don't truly impact where your performance lands, but you have to work with them. And so it's being able to figure out for yourself, okay, that B group, how do I want to work with them? How do I want to show up? What do I want my reputation to be known as, my brand to be known as with that group? Because if you hit the promotion, chances are you're now influencing that B group, or that B group is looking up to you for direction. And so you want to be thinking ahead of, okay, how am I building the rapport, the relationship, whatever it is, for, if it's a promotion, the promotion that I want, or the project that I want, but how do I also make sure I'm maintaining and nurturing the secondary relationship that's going to get bubbled up when I get to the goal that I'm trying to hit, whether it's a big high profile project, whether it's the promotion, etc.
Yeah. That to me is all about who are your stakeholders and what does your network look like? And how do those two relate to what your vision was? I know we may be sharing a bit of this, what I'll call ambiguity here, but it really is situational depending on where you're coming from and what's important to you. So it does require a little bit of thought and consideration, but you can be able to identify and then throughout the year course correct as you go through it.
Yeah, and as well about that A group and that B group at work. How does it change? If you do get that promotion, you get put onto a new project, does your A group and your B group change for you? And what does that mean to the previous A and B group and the current A and B group? I mean, that's something you have to decide because, there's an old saying of don't burn your bridges. Could that mean also just because now you've moved on to a new project, you've been promoted to a new area, what does that mean to the previous group? And are you going to still maintain a relationship with them? How has that relationship changed? A lot of companies are very fluid. You get promoted now. Next thing you know, someone from your previous A group or B group gets promoted. What's that relationship look like now? So you have to keep maintaining who's in your A group, who's in your B group. Is there maybe a B1, B2 group that you need to kind of maintain? You have to decide that for yourself and understand what does that really mean. And if you do burn your bridges, trust me, it'll come back to bite you. And maybe some of these promotions or projects or being tapped on the shoulder to do some really cool work, maybe those opportunities come less and less because you have burned your bridges. So always be aware of who's around you and what that A group and B group looks like, because it does change. And how are you showing up for those A people and B people in your life?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I keep listening to us chatting and sharing, I'm starting to think that it's not about starting the year fresh. It's about tapping in more to a strategic lens of how you're going to approach the year, especially at work, especially if your goals are related to, a promotion or landing a big project or things like that. Maybe it's taking the time to think about strategically, how are you going to approach the year? What might you need to do differently or consider for the goals or the visions that you have for the year?
Yeah. Daniela used the term earlier. She used the term invest in yourself, which I think is absolutely brilliant because, we can all go through life and just as things happen to us, they happen to us. Maybe I'll get the promotion if my manager thinks I'm worthy, being more of a bystander almost in your life type of thing. But if you invest in yourself, then you're making yourself a priority. And I just love that term, investing in yourself, because it's not always, investment doesn't always mean funds. It always also means time, effort, and seeing what other resources are out there for you, whether it be courses or volunteering opportunities. People a lot of times just kind of discount these ERGs. People discount these because they're volunteer. I'm not being paid to do this. But the visibility that you get, the people that you meet, it speaks volumes as to who you are as a person. And you do get to interact with people you wouldn't normally interact with. And those are the people that who can be the decision makers or can influence the decision makers on your behalf. Because sometimes when someone is quite senior, they don't know who the people 2-3 levels below them are. But if I know my second in command has worked with Daniela or Misha on this holiday party, they'll say, what were they like to work with? And they say, oh, you know what? They were great. I really enjoyed them. Picked up here, did that. And it's all this secondary word of mouth, which can really help you going forward because you took the time to invest in yourself. Investments, a good one, will take time to see the fruits.
Yeah, ERGs to me are the exact same as clubs in university. Everybody wanted to get on a couple of clubs so they can put it on their resume because on that first job, it paints a picture and creates a perception of, your involvement in community and volunteering and all that kind of stuff. It diversified your portfolio when you were applying for jobs. It's the exact same, but now it's in the workplace ecosystem. So you're not trying to get a job all the time in your organization, but the network of being part of a couple of ERGs or even just one.
Yeah.
And the perception that creates of you and how that facilitates your brand in the organization, all those things. It's just like clubs in university.
But as you share that, what that tells me is it's also a bit of a shift generationally too, right? Because we had ERGs, but there was still the old school smoking area at the back of the building where people were networking and getting to meet each other, right? I would just be totally frank. Or you join the dragon boat team, not because you necessarily care to be physical in dragon boat, because that's not easy. It's kind of gross depending on where you live, but you join it because there's a network of people, or you join the charity run that's involved, right? Which can be a lot of work sometimes. And maybe you're not an extrovert and you don't care for that kind of thing, but you're working you're building those relationships in a different way. I'm just going to take us back to one thing. I think, Misha, you said the word think of things strategically. If you're not a strategic thinker, and some people go back to always the example of if you're an individual contributor or if you're an individual that's happy with the work you do, you still have an opportunity to be intentional, to put yourself into an intentional mindset of saying, I want to enjoy the best year of my life here in the workplace. Really love the company. I want to make a difference. And I think that is a way for you to also be happier in coming in because you're intentional and you are choosing to show up and come to the place where you work, which, I mean, for some, it's just a salary. Fine. So be it. It pays the way you don't live to work. You work to pay for life. And I get that. But at the same time, if you're intentional and maybe the last 2-3 years haven't been as motivating, as interesting, as fun, how can you shift your own energy? Because people around you will notice. People around you will see that shift. And maybe it's the same work or mundane work you do over and over and over again. But if you're intentional and looking at things differently, if you are choosing to, I'll call it, harness your own amazingness in the office so people see in a different light, you'd be amazed at how much of a difference you can make. And if you're mid-career, you've been doing this for so long and you really choose not to go up the ladder, whatever that looks like, what can you show to the next generation that's coming in that is full of that, life and light and wants to be part of the ERG and wants to make a difference and comes from the school of thought of the more clubs and volunteers, the greater, the better your profile is. How can you be different for them, right? So you don't, I don't like to use a word, but sully their perspective because you're coming from a place of I've been miserable for a while. Right?
I think too, the other thing that has been kind of percolating in my mind here is it goes back to something, Claudia, you said, which is, sometimes you have to say these things out loud, which goes to different elements of psychology of, you say it out loud to bring it into existence. And on that vein, my brain also goes to thinking about who do you need to say it to out loud? Who's going to hold you accountable? Who's going to be in your corner? So it's not just about you. I would also think, when you're setting these visions or intentions or things like that for the year, it's also thinking about how do I not keep it within myself? Because I think that's where I'll speak personally. If I don't talk to anybody about my goals, I can come to terms with not hitting them so much faster because nobody knew about them. So nobody can hold me accountable. Nobody can see me as a failure. It's just with me, so it doesn't matter. Whereas if I'm thinking about, okay, this is what I want, who do I need to tell about it? It's not just so I can tell them and now I'm like bound by that. It's so that they can indirectly hold me accountable. It's also about having conversations. So I'll give you the example specifically about if you want to get onto a strategic project, okay? I think probably one of the best people, should you have the relationship with them, to say that out loud to as a strategic goal or vision or intention for the year is your manager. They can support you in making that happen. As a manager, I can tell you that when people tell me those types of goals, I start to look out for it because I might be in conversations that they'll never be exposed to.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
And so then I can say, hey, you know what? I think I know who the perfect person for this could be because I also know it aligns to their goals. And so you facilitate that opportunity. And so think about also, when you're talking about starting a fresh year and, setting goals, whatnot, it's who do you need to talk to about these goals so that it can be brought into existence?
The metaphor I use is where are you going to plant some seeds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So you can get some roots growing and you can get a tree coming up. Not all seeds will generate that tree, but where are those seeds going to be planted? So the right light, the right nutrients and everything is going to allow it to sprout.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to spread the seeds beyond the cultured bed, if you will, right? Because I just had this flashback when I was working for a consulting firm. Once the contract I was on finished, I don't know if this term still exists anymore, but I was quote unquote on the bench, right? And because through a social event, I met some individuals. Once they saw that my name was on the bench, even though I wasn't quote unquote the perfect candidate for the next project, my name came up because he just kind of sowed those seeds of networking. And even though they weren't exactly the hiring manager, they certainly were a direct report to the hiring manager. And they said, hey, I know this person. I know Claudia. I think she could do the job. I know she doesn't have this or this, but she does have this, this, and this, which is something we're lacking. And sure enough, I got moved onto a new contract within, I think, a week or two being on the bench, where people had been there for, quite honestly, almost a month. And that's very scary in the consulting companies. It certainly helped me move forward, right? Yeah. And again, you just don't know, going back to your analogy of sowing those seeds and planting those seeds, it's not just within the prepared garden. It could also be just a little bit on the edges sometimes too. Mm-hmm. Things can sprout.
If I take it one step further, it's not just about planting the seed. Don't be afraid to water that seed. Don't be afraid to come back to that seed, a couple months later, check in with, if it is your manager, let's say, check in to say, hey, I know I talked to you about this at the beginning of the year. Has anything come up? Is there anything you could see strategically that I get involved with? Maybe it's not a direct path. Maybe it's a little sidestep, but it could be a good opportunity. Or it's watering the seed to say, where do you think I could be approaching things differently? Do you have any feedback for me in relation to these things that I wanted to improve or achieve?
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Yeah. No, that sounds really good. I say, and be honest with yourself. What can you really achieve, right? I mean, if you have these aspirations, that's great. But what can you really achieve realistically? Push yourself, but don't push yourself too hard, because then, are you going to be successful? If you're not, what does that mean to you? Is it going to just drag you down, or does it give you that motivation to try even harder next time? You need to understand and know yourself when you pull these things together as well.
So the other thing I was going to offer and suggest is, January, you're setting your development plan for the year. I know I touched on this before. You have to set goals regardless, right? And those goals you'll be following up on throughout. So this should be, for lack of a better word, you've ridden the bike before, you know how to ride the bike. Here's an opportunity to take that bike down a more interesting path. Maybe there's some rocks along the way. Maybe there's some grass. Find the courage. You don't always have to ride the bike on the flat asphalt.
Right.
for lack of a better word. Find a little bit of adventure along the way and lean into it, or commit that you're going to try and lean into it.
Or even try a new bicycle.
Yeah, upgrade the bicycle. Absolutely.
Upgrade the bicycle.
Different form of transportation.
Yeah.
Take a scooter.
Go electric.
Try an e-bike. I rode an e-bike earlier this year, and boy, was it different. It's different compared to a regular bike. Caught me off guard a little bit.
I was thinking, grab the old skateboard, dust it off, and give that a shot too. But the point in all of this is, it really is an opportunity to, take all those lovely learnings and drive it forward.
Yeah.
So what are, I guess, the top things for you guys that you'd offer to our audience?
Well, if I could go first, I would say, I loved your verbiage, Daniela. Hope I don't steal it from you, is to invest in yourself. Don't let things happen to you. You be the one who makes things happen. So invest in yourself, figure out what that looks like for you, and be realistic as to, where you really want to go this year. Is it a vision versus milestones along the way to your vision? So those are probably the top things I would recommend. Misha?
I think for me, maybe it's not starting fresh. Maybe it's a continuation, but it's commitment to the reflections, thinking a little bit more strategically about how you want to achieve things. And the analogy of plant the seed, don't be afraid to water the seed, but take it as it comes. You don't have to set the whole year on January 1st. Take baby steps, adjust, pivot along the way. And I think above all else, at the start of the year, it's so easy to set all these expectations and put out all these resolutions. And then, I think I said it in my intro, come February, we've forgotten what we've talked about.
Yeah.
Give yourself grace throughout the whole process, throughout the whole year. Give yourself the room to grow.
Yeah.
Nice.
And if I can just tidy it up with everything you guys have said on my end, be intentional. Pivots happen. Change happens. Find the courage to lean in and ride the wave. And always look at anything that comes up over the course of the following year. Think of how you set your intention in January. Try to be honest and true to you, ultimately. It's the workplace.
It is.
Right? You can be amazing. Last year is a memory. The future is a gift.
Thanks for listening to The Coaching Divas. If you've enjoyed this episode, leave us a review and follow us on Instagram at The Coaching Divas.
Your ratings and reviews help more people like you find our podcast.
Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone you think would love it.
Until next time, we are
Claudia Jones,
Daniela Velkovic,
and Misha Jethba, The Coaching Divas.
If you're going to coach, might as well coach like a diva.